Last time on Shadow Piece, the battle between the thriller bark giant Bronya and Blackbeard Pirate's second in command Jesus Burgess was about to come to an end. But just as Burgess was about to finish her, somebody arrived to save the day. Burgess had jumped into the air and crossed his arm to form an X as he was falling down at a rapid speed from far up in the skies towards Bronya's chest. Well, the least I can do is honor your wish to die by the hands of the strongest. So here is my all-out attack. Ultimate Cross Dive! She saw him coming down faster and faster and then closed her eyes to find peace. But what she heard next wasn't the sound of all her bones shattering and feeling pain so immense she could only scream. Instead, a familiar voice ringed in her ears. Levitain! However, how that situation will continue is gonna be a focus for another time, because we have to jump to a different part of the island, where two of the arguably strongest fighters of this war were clashing with each other. The sea was quiet, unnervingly so. No gulls, no chatter, only the sound of waves lapping against the thick, now candy-coated shoreline of Hachinosu Island. The air itself seemed to have frozen, not by weather, but by intent, as silence forced upon the world as two titans prepared to meet. For the Charlotte family, this was no longer merely about territory or reputation. This was about blood, pride, and survival. Charlotte Katakuri stood at the edge of the Sweet Sea, his massive frame half shrouded in shadow. The long scarf around his mouth drifted in the sea breeze, and his trident, Mogura, rested easily in his hand, though the weight of command hung much heavier on his shoulders. Since the fall of Big Mom, there had been no time to grieve. He had taken the mantle, if only as a stopgap, but his siblings looked up to him as their leader now, and their enemies had wasted no time in testing his leadership. The Blackbeard Pirates had stolen into their territory like vermin, a swarm of chaos and ambition. They had not come merely to plunder, they had taken something that could not be ignored. His sister, Charlotte Pudding, was gone, dragged into the shadows by Teacher's crew. That crime alone would have been enough to ignite the rage in Katakuri's veins, but worse still, it had been Kuzan who had struck the deepest wound. The former Marine Admiral had frozen Katakuri in their last confrontation, leaving him humiliated and helpless as his family watched. It was not a memory he could forgive. The surface of the water before him shimmered unnaturally. A film of frost crept outwards, spreading like spiderweb cracks across a mirror. Within seconds, the sweet sea turned brittle and white. Entire waves arrested mid-motion, sculpted into frozen jagged arcs. The culprit emerged from the mist of his own creation, hands in pockets, his gait lazy as if the battlefield were nothing more than a casual stroll for him. Kuzan's half-lidded eyes scanned the horizon, then fixed on Katakuri. "You're looking well, considering the last time." His voice was soft, almost bored, but every word carried the chill of indifference. "I don't suppose you're here for a nice talk, to catch up and talk about potential alliances." Katakuri tightened his grip on Mogura. His observation haki stretched forward like an unseen wave, reading faint flickers of possible futures. Shards of ice erupting, a fist of mochi slamming down, the endless cascade of cause and effects. The paths were many, none simple. He saw pain, he saw resistance, he did not see victory. But retreat was not an option. "You'll pay for what you've done to my family," Katakuri said, his voice low, rumbling like distant thunder. "This sea isn't yours to walk on, and I won't leave here without my sister." Kuzan exhaled slowly, a mist of cold fog billowing out. "Always so dramatic. You've inherited more than Dylan's appetite for sweets, it seems." His shoulders rose in a half shrug. "Fine, so be it. Let's see if you've fought out since last time." The ice under Kuzan's boots cracked as he shifted his stance, and in the same instant the battle began. Katakuri was the first to move, his arms twisted, flesh spiraling outward in a massive torrent of mochi that hardened with armament haki, black steel sheen coating the sticky mass. He flung it forward like a tidal wave, the sheer force of it capable of crushing entire buildings. The mochi roared across the frozen sea, aiming to swallow Kuzan whole, but the admiral turned pirate was already gone. His body dissolved into shards of frost, reforming a dozen meters away as the wave of mochi slammed into the ice, cracking it, then binding it under its sticky weight. Kuzan's expression didn't change. He raised a single hand, and the air turned bitter. "Huh, Ice Age." The words were casual, but the effect was apocalyptic. A wall of cold surged outward from Kuzan, engulfing the mochi and solidifying it instantly into an enormous glacier. The white sheen spread faster than fire, threatening to lock Katakuri himself into a crystal tomb. but Katakuri had seen it coming. Future sight whispered in his veins, showing him a flicker of himself frozen once more. He would not repeat that shame. His body warped into Mochi, flowing backwards with impossible speed, and Mogura swung in a brutal arc. The trident shattered the advancing ice, splinters spraying like shrapnel. Katakuri's scar fluttered as he snarled, "Your tricks won't work on me again." Kuzan tilted his head unimpressed. "We'll see." The battlefield became a storm. Katakuri launched strike after strike, from every angle imaginable, arms transforming into colossal tendrils of hardened mochi, fists slamming down like meteors. Each attack shook the frozen sea, leaving craters and tremors that echoed for miles. His haki infused every blow, the raw power of a Yonko's air pressing down with the intent to crush. Kuzan met the storm with calm inevitability. Spears of ice erupted from the ground to intercept the trident. Barriers of frost blocked fists that could pulverize giants. He moved with deceptive laziness, each step sliding him smoothly across his frozen domain. While Katakuri's fury was relentless, Kuzan's defense was effortless. Its height of cold it absorbed every strike and turned it in kind. A beam of ice shot from Kuzan's hand, razor sharp and instant. Katakuri twisted, body dissolving into mochi as it cut through him, reforming behind the admiral in an instant. Mogura lunged for Kuzan's chest, but the man dissolved into ice, reappearing behind Katakuri. A kick laced with frozen haki slammed into his ribs, the impact sending shockwaves across the ice. Katakuri coughed once, staggered, but his body was already reforming, his wound sealed with mochi. He retaliated instantly, spinning and unleashing a massive barrage of mochi donuts in the air, each birthing a hardened fist that rained down from above. Kagami Mochi! Muso! The fists hammered downwards, a relentless bombardment, but Kuzan simply raised one arm, and a dome of pure ice encased him, absorbing the storm in a cacophony of frozen explosions. When the barrage cleared, the dome cracked and shattered, and Kuzan stepped out unscathed, his breath visible in the air. "You've grown," he admitted, almost conversational, "but anger won't make you any stronger." Katakuri's single visible eye blazed. "No, but my family will." The clash intensified. Every movement was a collision of extremes. Heedless cold versus suffocating weight. Unclear justice against family duties. Katakuri's foresight allowed him to dance on the knife's edge of defeat, evading freezes by fractions of seconds, countering attacks before they fully manifested. Yet Kuzan's Logia intangibility and control over his elements made him untouchable. An endless storm of ice that could not be cornered. Cracks spiderwebbed across the battlefield as their powers reshaped the world. Towers of jagged ice and pillars of hardened mochi jutted from the sea, clashing like titans frozen mid-duel. The very territory of the Blackbeard Pirates groaned under their feet. Katakuri lunged forward, Mogura clashing against an ice blade Kuzan had formed from his own frozen essence. Sparks and frost sprayed into the air as their weapons locked. Katakuri's muscles bulged, mochi reinforcing his every fiber, while Kuzan's calm gaze never wavered. "You're strong," Kuzan said quietly, eyes creeping outward along Mogura's shaft. "But strength alone doesn't decide who survives." Katakuri's eyes narrowed. "I know." He wrenched Mogura free, slammed his palm into the ground, and the battlefield erupted. A surge of mochi pillars launched upward, tearing through the ice, attempting to engulf Kuzan entirely. The admiral vanished in a flash of frost, reappearing above, hand extended. A massive sphere of ice gathered, spinning, compressing. Ice meteor. He hurled it down, the weight of a mountain crashing towards Katakuri. The new pirate captain roared, his body swelling with mochi, fists multiplying into 100 hardened hammers. "Kagami Mochi!" The fists collided with the glacier in mid-air, shattering it into a blizzard of shards that rained down upon them. Ice and mochi littered the battlefield, transforming it into a wasteland of frozen syrup and shattered frost. Both combatants stood amid the wreckage, breath steady, eyes locked. Neither bore the marks of defeat, but neither stood unscathed either. Katakuri's body steamed where frost clung to his skin, and Kuzan's jacket was torn, streaked with hardened mochi. The world seemed to pause, waiting, knowing this was only the beginning. Katakuri shifted his stance, observation haki pulling him deeper into glimpses of the future yet to come, paths that led to blood, broken ice, and silence. He tightened his grip on Mogura in preparation. Kuzan's breath fogged in the air. He flexed his fingers, frost swirling at his fingertips, a quiet inevitability in every motion. The frozen sea groaned beneath them, as though it too understood the weight of what was to come. Neither spoke, neither yielded. The battle was far from over. Both sides still had many tricks up their sleeves, and both sides both had reasons why they couldn't just stop or postpone this fight. And this is the end of today's episode of Shadow Piece. I hope you enjoyed our episode of this week, called A New Leader. The new leader in this sense is Katakuri, obviously. He's the new leader of this pirate crew, the Big Mom Pirates, or whatever it might be called in the future, considering that Big Mom is not in the picture anymore. There's a lot of burden on his shoulder. Just imagine just suddenly being thrusted into the situation. All of the people in the family relied on Big Mom. She was the strongest by miles, just considering everything. But now, this burden is on him. He has to carry them on. So let's see how this is going to go out against the once Admiral Kuzan, or back then he was called Aokiji. Now he's one of the 10 Titanic captains. But for now, that's all from me for today. All that's left to be said is stay happy, stay healthy, and most importantly, stay cultured. Pyro, out. Bye!